It's January 31st, 2025 at 11:09 p.m. Turns out that this episode that I'm calling Just Talking number 15 is scheduled for release February 1st, 2025, approximately 51 minutes before the date that it's supposed to be released. Yeah, I kind of cut it close. My name is Phil, and you're listening to The Lip. Well, here we are. Episode number 193 of The Lip. Well over, got to be around 20 or so here on YouTube. The rest you can find on Spotify, which I now simply call the archives of the show because that's all it is for right now. That's where all the rest of the content is stored and located. Turns out that I'm going to do Just Talking episode today, or I should say tonight, leading up until the morning when I release it. You know, the thing that's interesting about this episode is going to be that I actually have a lot of stuff that I want to talk about. And I can already see that there's so much stuff that I'm going to be doing Just Talking 16 next week because it's a good problem to have. It really is. I like to have lots of content. It's great. But in order to keep the show a reasonable length of time, I gotta sort of pull back a little bit and I guess essentially save some for a later date. And I've definitely got some that I'm going to be saving for next week. In fact, a lot more than I expected. Turns out that when I get into the main event of the show, I'm going to be talking about something really, really, really current. Something that literally just happened a few hours ago. And I'm going to talk about it now. It's something that I've never done before. I've had things that have happened during a week, and I was able to address it when I'm getting ready to do my show. But this would be the first time that an active situation happened that I'm actually going to talk about. It's going to be interesting. Not necessarily the best situation, but it is certainly something that is clearly newsworthy, and I should probably say something about it. And that's what I'm about to do. It's incredible. 2 episodes that are going to be about talking because I have just so much stuff to talk about. I can't wait to get to the main event and sort of go through all this stuff. Lots of notes. And like I said, I'm probably only going to do about half of the notes I have right now for today. This episode being released on February 1st, 2025. But no worries. The rest of it you'll hear on February 8th, 2025. And hopefully you'll be just excited to continue with these topics. On that note, I'm going to go straight to fill in the blanks, trying not to take up too much time in this beginning. I want to sort of use as much time as possible to keep within my framework to get to the main event. And so, the question for the fill in the blanks today is going to be as follows. What are my plans for the first weekend without football prior to the Super Bowl coming up? Well, the blank spot can easily be filled for me because, well, I'm a wrestling fan and I'm going to elaborate more on that in the main event. But my plans are to watch the Royal Rumble, which is the first major pay per view of the year. And without a doubt, it is the first step towards the march to WrestleMania. And granted, football usually comes on Sundays, especially in the playoffs. You have a few games on Saturday, and then they whittle them way down until we got two Sunday games, and then you have one Sunday game. But hey, the PLE, or Premium Live Event that WWE is going to be hosting, the Royal Rumble, tomorrow. I can still say tomorrow as I'm recording. Still got 45 minutes. Uh, it's one of the big four events. Major pay-per-view or premium live event that WWE puts out. One of the biggest four events that they have of the year. And usually it's one of the more exciting ones. And I can't wait for it. It's always a lot of fun. See the countdown for each wrestler as they come down for the Battle Royal, as everyone gets eliminated one by one. The next superstar comes to the ring. It's just a lot of fun. I love the Royal Rumble. And the question one more time is, what am I going to do in this weekend without football? I'm going to be watching the Royal Rumble. And on that note, it's time for the main event. Typically, when I go through my notes on these just talking episodes, I have to sort of plot my way through where I'm going to begin. Not this time. It's pretty clear where I'm starting. I'm starting on the most current thing, which is what has just happened today. And boy, not only did it just happen today, let me reiterate the date and time right now. It is January 31st, 2025, and it is 11:16 p.m. as I'm talking to you, making this recording right now. Around 6 o'clock today, on January 31st, 2025, here in Northeast Philadelphia, more specifically, around Cottman Ave and the Roosevelt Boulevard, there was a very tragic event that happened. It turns out that a Learjet, which was used as a medical transportation for the Shriner Children's Hospital, crashed in that area between Cottman Ave and Roosevelt Boulevard. This was a major, major issue. It was a horrible explosion. There were 6 people on board the plane. Now, of course, 4 of them were staff, and 2 were, one was a patient, a young child who was a patient, and that young child's mother, who was aboard the Learjet, which when it went down, in a really, the only way I could describe it from the videos that I've seen was a horrific fireball. Now, from the placement of where I live and I'm actually recording this plane crash happened relatively close to home, and it was when I was actually out and about tonight. So, fortunately, I wasn't in the area, but unfortunately, there were people who were, and it turns out that on top of the people who lost their lives on the plane, there were many people, from what I understand, at least 6 from the reports that I heard as of now, who were on the ground, who were injured, either while traveling on a bus, in a car, and then there was also the people who were in the housings and the buildings in the surrounding area of the crash, and it was a mess from what I could see. Now, unfortunately, to make this matter so much worse, earlier this week there was a helicopter and a plane that collided in Washington, D.C. So it's a very rare thing to actually have a plane crash, but to have 2 of them relatively close in time, that's really kind of crazy. Now, here in the Northeast where I'm living, I often see small planes flying by. Now, this medical plane was not a large plane. It was just a small Learjet, which is, it didn't have many passengers, just the six that were unfortunately killed. But as I drive up and down Roosevelt Boulevard in this area in the Northeast and just around the area, there are small planes that are flying overhead all the time. And every once in a while I look up and I say to myself, boy, that plane, it looks a little low, but the pilots know what they're doing, and they are just either taking off from the airport, the Northeast Airport, which is a small airport where small planes come out of, or the plane is going in for a landing at that airport. So, in the general area from where I drive, the planes typically are a little bit lower for that reason, because they're either taking off or they're landing. Most likely scenario in both cases. Um, it's just tragic to think that that happened, and unfortunately, the families of the people who were on board, the pilots, the crew that were there, and the mother and child who were on their way home to Mexico after they had their treatment at the Shriner Hospital. Unfortunately, they did not make it back. But it's one of those situations where the good people at the Shriner Hospital, who, much like a lot of the children's hospitals, they don't charge, they take donations. They were doing the good work. And hopefully they continue to do the good work for the children who are sick and need their services. Whew, that was a very crazy way to start this show. And like I said, I'm literally starting late because, well, I've just had to really get a little bit more information about that situation. And man, that takes a little bit of a toll. Takes a little bit of a toll. Excuse me. I'm running on E a little bit. You're gonna just have to bear with me just a little bit. Now, I'm gonna go to a little bit more cheery or distracting, is a better way to put it. A way to essentially suspend your disbelief. And I'm gonna talk a little wrestling. Going back to the what I'm gonna do without any football this weekend. I will be watching the Royal Rumble. That happens to be coming on. Looking at the clock, it's still going to be coming on tomorrow. And, well, the best part about it is it's going to be 6 o'clock, 6:30 start, somewhere in that neighborhood where they're going to do the pre-show and get themselves ready for it. Now, the only thing that's a little different about this Royal Rumble than I can say about every single other Royal Rumble that has ever happened in history of WWE is this Royal Rumble is in February. Now, why do I say it's different? Because it is. Usually the Royal Rumble is within the last week or the last 3 weeks of January. That's really when it usually happens. And when it used to happen that way, that was the days well before the time that they started doing gigantic stadium shows. And it also was well before the days that they did 2 nights of WrestleMania. And they also did most of their WrestleManias that they had in those big stadiums outside in warm weather places. Like they had one, I believe it was, I hope I'm not wrong. I want to say WrestleMania 31. That one was in one of the greatest stadiums you could ever have out there in Santa Clara, Levi Stadium, where the 49ers play. Seth Rollins cashed in Money in the Bank at the main event with Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, much like the cash in of Damian Priest on Drew McIntyre here in Philadelphia at WrestleMania 40. But having said that, I personally believe that that's part of the reason why they wanted the Royal Rumble to be a little bit later. Because if you push the Royal Rumble a little bit later, you can then push WrestleMania a little bit later. Typically speaking, WrestleMania for years was indoors, and if it was not indoors, it was somewhere outside in a warm weather climate. Now, last year, the Showcase of the Immortals was in Philadelphia. I was happy. I went to it. However, the temperature didn't necessarily cooperate during night one. And we're talking early April. It was April 6th and 7th was WrestleMania last year, WrestleMania 40. Now, like I've said before, WrestleMania sometimes has happened even earlier. It's happened in March at times. But of course, those times that happened in March, they were usually inside of a bigger arena or a basketball stadium or inside of a dome stadium um, that would hold basketball, or rather baseball or football. But last year, it was outside in Philadelphia, and boy, it was wicked cold. I've gone on record to say that I rewatched it after I went, and the commentators did not hold back any when talking about how cold it was that day for night one. So my theory is that they chose to push the Royal Rumble back so that they could push WrestleMania back. So WrestleMania 41 this year is going to be in, I'm going to say it's in late April. We're talking the 19th and 20th of April, which is, I believe it's Easter weekend, if memory serves me correct. And they wanted to make sure that they were not going to have any cold weather issues. Or, I believe it was WrestleMania 38, just after the COVID incident was, I'm going to say it was just about over, and people were able to assemble in larger places. So WrestleMania was in Tampa Bay, where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play, and they had a bit of an incident there where it rained, and there was probably a 20-minute to half an hour delay before the show started. Just rained buckets. It was crazy. And so WWE said, we don't want any of that rain, and we don't want any of that cold, so we're pushing it back in some time, so it's going to be warmer, but we want to do more than that. We want to put it in a desert. So WrestleMania is going to be in Las Vegas. But we want to do even better than that. We want to put it in a dome. So not only is it going to be a farther, later date, so it's going to be warmer outside, it's going to be more towards middle spring, then it's going to be inside of a dome located in a desert. So there will not be any complaints about WrestleMania 41 being cold in any way. That's not going to happen. Mission accomplished, WWE. Mission accomplished. You were able to satisfy that problem. But of course, they also did some other cool retro things. Um, Saturday night's main event, one of my childhood, just made my childhood great watching some of those things. I mean, I'll never forget Hulk Hogan giving the big boss man a superplex off the top of the big blue steel cage. That was a highlight. Seeing Zeus from the movie No Holds Barred stand there and attack Hulk Hogan before he got into that situation. This is just Saturday night's main event was a lot of fun forever. Unfortunately, I got to watch my favorite tag team, Demolition, lose to the Brainbusters, but it was neat to see. It was a good match. They brought it back one more time, and and it seems like it may be a mainstay. Been Saturday Night Main Event a couple times now this year, and each time they put together pretty much a really good card to the point where it looks almost like a PLE. They do seem like they feel like a premium live event because they have all the really good matches in there. The only difference is they have commercials. But to their credit, they were able to reunite and get back together with one of my personal favorite people in not just wrestling, not just in showbiz, but in politics. Jesse the Body Ventura has come back and did commentary for a match each time, and he's just a lot of fun to see him back with the WWE. You can't ask for better than that. At least I can't ask for better than that. I loved every second of it. Let's step away from the world of pro wrestling and let's move towards the fact that we are going to be talking about February. The show comes out February 1st, which means Sunday is February 2nd, which is Groundhog Day. Now, I think that Tony Phil is one of the wisest and greatest creatures who's ever lived in the state of Pennsylvania. And sometimes I don't necessarily agree with his decisions, and sometimes his decisions are wrong when he doesn't see a shadow, or he does see a shadow. You never know. Most of the time, it's a coin flip. We may get the 6 more weeks of winter, or we may get an early spring. Now, personally, the sooner spring comes, the better. And if you look at the way it's been here in Philadelphia for the last going on a week and a half, it was really, really, really mild. In fact, we had a couple days where it scraped the 50 degree mark. I'm not going to complain about that, considering that a few weeks before that, we were having wind chills that were like in the single digits and snow. So I'll take 50 degrees any day over a wind chill in the single digits. So this is me, one Phil to another. I'm going to ask you to do me a solid. You don't have to worry about anybody else. Just one Phil to another Phil. Yeah, my back. Do whatever it takes to get us an early spring. I'll make sure to send you some peanuts. I got you on that. If you can give me an early spring, I'll make sure to get you some peanuts. You know, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Everybody wins, right? I think so. Speaking of winning, and I do mean winning in a very big way. Um, I keep meaning to do a video about my torn bicep. I kept it going pretty well for a while, but I guess because I had so many things that I was doing and running around a great deal over the past 2 weeks, I actually saw my doctor, one of the greatest doctors I've ever had, Dr. Daniel Davis, and he put me together when this Humpty Dumpty fell off the uh, the wall, and I can certainly say that the job he did was incredible. I can do a lot of things that I couldn't do before the surgery, and of course, thanks in part to Kelly, my physical therapist, and Linda, they helped get my strength back to a point where it's not all the way right yet, but it is so far in the right direction that the doctor has released me from his care and allows me to do the physical therapy at home and even move towards going to the gym and doing some things in order to rehashing and getting the strength back. Even though that is the case, that I've been released, he did tell me that the full extent of the surgery and the repair is going to take about a year for it to heal. So realistically, I still have some more time that it's got to settle in, or the weaved in Achilles tendon, which is now part of my new bicep, is going to settle in and actually be functional to a point of as normal as it's going to get, if that makes any sense. I'm excited about it because that just means that I'm getting close. I am definitely getting close. The fact that it's January now, I've got a few more months until August, which would make it over a year. And I already know the one positive out of all of it is I haven't had a real pain, the kind that just makes you scream and just miserable since November. I had pain then that was just negative pain, just because it hurt. But as of December, January, the only pain that I've been in has been the good kind of pain, which is the kind of pain you get after a workout. I'm all in on that because that means things are working the way they're supposed to. And I'll take that pain that you feel after a workout any day because once it settles down, it feels fine. I still have a little bit of numbness in my forearm. All the Dr. Davis said that that was going to be a possible side effect. It may or may not go away, but if it doesn't go away, I can look at it this way: it'd be a good time to get a tattoo because I don't feel anything. um, I do believe that I'm in good shape when it comes to that. I'll be having a lot of progress, and I'm excited for it. Um, what else we got here? Um, here comes one that I find really funny, and I think I should talk about this because it is really funny. I know that there are plenty of people out there who are a little bit on the superstitious wave, and I can tell you right now, if you are, you certainly would not want to be in the situation that I was in this past week as well. Or it was a very fun situation. Now, here we are. It is the last week in January, and this scenario happened over 2 days. Now, this just didn't happen on one day. Now, if it happened on the same day, it would be really messed up. But the fact that it happened within 2 days, it still makes it special. My youngest daughter Maggie comes down the stairs and she's twirling around an umbrella in the house. Some superstitious people would be like, "Oh my goodness, close that umbrella! You shouldn't have an umbrella open in the house." And of course, I didn't think anything of it because I just told her to put it away because she needed to put it away. Like the umbrellas go in the closet. Shouldn't really be just running around with the umbrella in the house because that's the time when the umbrella would get broken, and when you need it, now you don't have it, which would be a problem. If there was anything that was bad luck about having an umbrella open in the house, that would have to be it. I could see it now. She's twirling around and it gets caught on the couch and she pulls it. Next thing you know, the umbrella breaks. And of course, in that scenario, the very next day, it would be downpouring. There's your bad luck. Now you're going to get wet because you don't have your umbrella. But what happened The very next day is what sort of solidifies this weird superstitious thing, which would make some people's skin totally crawl. In my older daughter's room, Aurora, the mirror that's mounted on her wall fell off the wall, shattered into a million pieces. Mirror glass all over the floor. Just couldn't believe it. I heard the bang and ran upstairs. Like, what was that? And he was, the mirror fell off the wall. And I'm like, ooh, that's not good. Glass everywhere. And I told her, like, all right, gotta go put your shoes on, and we're gonna go sweep this all up and throw it out. Gotta be careful not to get our hands cut up. And make sure you're wearing shoes because you don't want to step in any glass. Meanwhile, during the process of cleaning up the glass, after I picked up the big pieces, there was a penny on the floor, and of course the penny was tails up, and people think that that's bad luck. So, how much worse luck could it be? You have a broken mirror and a penny that is tails up. So now you're like the superstitious person, be like, "Uh oh, I really need to throw some salt over my shoulder." But wait, just like any good infomercial, there's more. Aurora has a cat, which I've probably mentioned before, and he's a good cat. He's a great cat. He's the best cat that we've ever had. But in this situation, for the superstitious person, he would certainly not be the cat you would want to be in the room after somebody had an umbrella open in the house, found a penny, tails up, in a pile of glass that was from a broken mirror. Because, well, her cat, Phoenix, is a black cat. So just envision the scenario, and I don't know why I didn't take a picture of it because it would have been the ultimate picture to make people lose their mind who are superstitious. A penny facing tails up in a pile of broken mirror glass while a black cat walks into the room. You can't make that stuff up. You just can't. You really can't. The only thing that would have made that better is if the ladder that I had outside was inside the house, in the door frame, as the cat walked into the room. So the black cat would walk under the ladder through the broken glass of the mirror with the penny facing tails up. At that point, I don't know what you do. I think maybe you go outside and you look for four-leaf clover and you try to get as many as you can and you bury them so that they all grow in one nice patch of nothing but four-leaf clovers, while you use a horseshoe to make sure that you can carry them instead of just using a regular flower pot. Use the horseshoe to hook into the flower pot with all the clovers in it, so that you have that going in that direction. And maybe, just maybe, you can overcome all that craziness. uh, as long as you have a rabbit's foot, but just remember, having a rabbit's foot is not lucky for the rabbit. That was a scenario that, like I said, you couldn't make it up. You just couldn't. The situation like that was just, I still can't get over the fact that all those things happened to coexist and coincide all at one time. Let's see. We still have some more good notes to write about and talk about here. Where are we going to go next? I think I'll talk about that later on, but I'll talk about this right now because after next week's show, the other half of this, Just Talking, well, not the other half, but call it Just Talking 16, so it'll be its own separate entity. I am going to be implementing another new segment because as of now, I've been implementing my NFL picks. And fortunately, I've done very well this season. And I'm going to tell you what I did in the NFC and AFC championship games. But all in all, I am well above water as far as my record goes. Playoffs counted right now, my record is 58 and 44. That's not half bad. 58 and 44. Granted, I probably picked a few games. Excuse me. I probably picked a few games with my heart and not my head when it came to the 49ers. And that might have made the difference. As I thumb through here, looks like, yeah, I definitely picked heart over head with a couple of these games here that I just expected that the team that I was looking for should have won. Definitely the 49ers. I did it a few times. And definitely with the Commanders. I did it a few times during the regular season where I thought that, well, the 49ers should be able to win. And then it's like, oh, this exciting new kid. Yeah, he's doing his stuff. He can turn this thing around. And instead of actually looking at the situation for what it was and actually going through it and saying, hey, he can do this. No, he can't. The other team's defense a little bit better. There's injuries over here. I didn't look at it that way. And as a result, I lost a few games that I probably could have won if I logically looked at it. But that's okay. We're talking more about that at the end of the main event. But I do have a couple of ideas for a new segment. I love Don't Go to Jail, and I miss Don't Go to Jail. And when it comes right down to it, I am going to bring out one last Don't Go to Jail segment. And I'm going to do it at a very specific and special time. And I'm excited for that time. And trust me, it's going to happen. And when it happens, I will let you all know when Don't Go to Jail comes about. And trust me, when I break it out, it's going to be broken out for all the right reasons. And I think that it'll be perfectly timed and it'll be perfectly placed at the perfect situation for a Don't Go to Jail uh, segment. Having said that, I do have the combination of two more segments that are in my head that I want to do. And one of them I'm leaning towards. The other one I'm thinking about keeping it sacred because I've only used it in a certain scenario. Admittedly, the one that I've used in a certain scenario, I'm about to use that again too for the very same practical purpose that I'm going to use the Don't Go to Jail segment. And do I want to make this scenario a regular thing? I don't know. I'm not sure. I know I enjoy doing it. And I think it works better if I do it in the intended situation, if that makes any sense. So, more likely than not, the one segment that I want to do is going to be the one that I'm going to do because it doesn't really require the same It doesn't require the same, not motivation is the word I'm looking for, but it doesn't require the same mechanics. That's a better way to put it. To pull off the one segment versus the other. So because the one doesn't require the same amount of mechanics, I may skip it and use it in the same way that I wanted to use it and never change from that and just keep it in that regard. But I'm going to go on feel and I'm going to see what it feels like after I use it again in the very near future. I'm not going to go into what these new possible segments are going to be, but there's absolutely going to be a new one, and I'm going to just make up my mind as opposed to what it's going to be for the not the 8th, but the show after that. I believe it's the 15th will be the new segment, February 15th. And when it happens, I'll make sure to let you know, but you won't be able to miss it. Well, I do believe I touched on a great many of the things that I wanted to get into for this episode, and I still have a lot of meat on the bone that I want to go into, and I think that if I continue to go through these other things I want to just talk about, I might extend the show to a point where it's going to feel like the never ending story or the song that doesn't end. So, on that note, I'm going to ring the bell on the main event and move on towards the next segment. And here we go. My football picks. Championship week was last week. I'm not necessarily a fan of either of these four teams, but I appreciate all four of them. I do. I appreciate the Eagles because as much as I've hated them for the last couple of years, I appreciate the fan base from being a Philadelphia guy myself. I can definitely appreciate a fan base that is that passionate about their team. It's so much better than what I've seen as a 49er fan from the Rams fans who are in Los Angeles. There would be times when I would be watching the 49ers play the Rams in Los Angeles, and if you didn't recognize that there was a dome on the that we're playing in, you would have think that they would have been in Santa Clara and it was a 49er home game. That'll never happen here in Philadelphia, and I can appreciate that. The Commanders, their owner owns the Sixers and my boys in New Jersey, the Devils. And let me tell you, just this week, the Devils and Flyers had a couple of big battles, and the one that really mattered to me was one that happened a couple days ago that put a smile on my face on an otherwise really tiring and taxing day where the Devils shut out the Flyers 5-1. And it was not pretty. The score didn't do it justice. The Devils were beaten on and beaten on and beaten on the Sixers to a point where there was no tomorrow. But having said that, the Commanders have a quarterback that I may have mentioned that I find incredible. Jaden Daniels is a great player. So good that on Madden, because I tend to like to use a second team after a while because my 49ers, because of just the way I like to make them and set them up and make trades and dominate things with them. They never lose the Super Bowl. So there's times when I decide that I create a secondary team to push my 49ers. And a lot of times I will use a team that has slightly different type of feel to it. And this Madden, I've chosen the Browns as my second team. And I first thing I did was I took Jaden Daniels and I made him my quarterback. And what a difference maker he is. And he's just an incredible guy. He's got great arm, tremendous legs, and I find him to be a great young quarterback. And I do believe that this NFC Championship game that he's in is not going to be the last one we're going to see him in. Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen. I think that, and I'm gonna go right to the Chiefs too. Patrick Mahomes. I mean, the AFC has Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and we're gonna see those guys battle each other for. I think Mahomes is in his 8th year. It's easy in my mind to be able to say that we're going to see Mahomes and Allen battle it out. It wouldn't be a far fetched thing to say that they're going to be playing each other for the next 8 years, another 8 to 10 years. That'll be 18 years for Mahomes if he feels like playing somewhere in that neighborhood for Josh Allen. But don't worry, there's still going to be some room for Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, and those four are going to be banging heads against each other for the next 10 years in the AFC. I just hope Brock Purdy can elevate himself and be in there with Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts. Now to get to the meat of the matter, as they say. I chose the Buffalo Bills to become the AFC champions over Kansas City Chiefs in a close game, 30-27. I gave a 3-point margin. Well, turns out I was right on one count. It was, in fact, a 3-point margin. But it was the Chiefs with 32 and the Bills with 31. So Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. I take the L. Commanders, Eagles, third time's a charm. They'll play each other one more time. This time, it's for the NFC Championship. Commanders, a little bit long in the tooth on the defensive side, very young on the offensive side, but there was no meeting in the middle there. I expected this thing to go 35-24 in favor of the Commanders. I thought they were going to have them by a little bit. The Eagles made no mistake. They said, short work. We're going to go out there and eat you up. It was 55-23. Commanders were never in the game. It's what happens if you turn the football over. The answer to what your game is going to end up being is you're going to lose. You're going to lose. It's just that simple. You're going to lose. And they did. They did badly. Just as badly as I did here in the championship round, as I lost both games. The two teams who I wanted to be in the Super Bowl did not make it. But yet and still, there will be a Super Bowl, even though it's the Chiefs and the Eagles rematch. So, who do I think is going to win and what the score is going to look like? I don't even want to count for a score. I'm really hoping that a vortex opens up and sucks both of these teams into the center of the earth. But since that's not likely to happen, but there's hope. There's always hope. But probably not going to happen. Chiefs and the Eagles. Obviously, I don't want either of these teams to win, but one of them will. looking at it from the perspective of who I want to win versus who I don't want to win. I don't want either to win, but I don't want to see the Chiefs three-peat. I really don't. But I also don't want to hear the Eagles fans winning their second Super Bowl. I don't want to hear that either. Do I think Saquon Barkley deserves a Super Bowl championship? Absolutely. He's the best player I've seen since, well, Christian McCaffrey. And that's why some part of me is actually hoping the Eagles do win. Because if they win, we will hear about it and how great they are and how they'll always be dominant and win every Super Bowl ever. But you do know that there is going to be a problem next year, a secret problem, but a pretty obvious one. It's no doubt in my mind, and it shouldn't be any doubt in anybody's mind, who the cover guy is going to be for Madden 2026. Just saying, a guy who had a 2,000-yard rushing season. Just saying, a guy who had what I believe is the most incredible move I've ever seen, and it may actually be the greatest move that has ever existed. So much so that they stopped everything and they had the computer engineers at EA Sports recode the game in order to put that move in the game only about a month after he did it. And you can only do it with him. It is the reverse hurdle. And boy, that's Saquon all day long. He's going to be the Madden cover guy. It shouldn't even be close. But the good part about that is, as a 49ers fan who wanted a 49er on the cover, who did not really think the curse through, got to see Christian McCaffrey with these weird, and it is weird, Achilles injury that kept him out all year long, pretty much. I'm just saying that Saquon Barkley, he's a cover boy, and expect horrific play, crippling injury, just some horrible thing. And an Eagles Super Bowl next year is absolutely out of the question. Totally not going to happen. Because some horrible thing is going to happen to him when he gets caught up with this Madden curse. It's just what's going to happen. Kansas City Chiefs. Since Patrick Mahomes has been there, ask yourself the question. He's won 3 Super Bowls. Who did he beat in those 3 Super Bowls? He beat 2 teams. He beat the 49ers and he beat the Eagles. Just 2 teams. So, having said that, he's already beaten the 49ers twice. So, it looks like it's time for him to beat the Eagles twice. And that's why I think he's going to do that. And the score is going to be just as miserable as the last couple scores. I see Kansas City 28, and I see the Eagles just failing like the 49ers did, 24. Super Bowl champions, first time ever three-peat. Kansas City Chiefs makes me pass a kidney stone. On that note, it's time for the Spear of the Week. The Spear of the Week is going to be Patrick Mahomes. And not for the reason you may think. It turns out that on some wrestling event, I have to throw it out there one more time. Patrick Mahomes is an absolute heel. He is a bad guy. Don't trust him, don't like him, don't cheer him. When Logan Paul had Jey Uso in the ring, they set him up to take him out. And what happened? Well, Patrick Mahomes took his Super Bowl rings, all three, gave them to Logan Paul to put on his hand so that he could punch Jey Uso with them. Fortunately, Jey Uso got out of the way and was able to escape harm. But the intention was Patrick Mahomes actually gave him those Super Bowl rings so he could knock Jey Uso out. So, Patrick Mahomes, you're a heel, and you deserve to get Roman Reigns spearing you. And that's exactly why I'm going with Patrick Mahomes is the recipient of the Spear of the Week. Okay, another show in the books. Just Talking 15 is done. To let you know, I pulled the picture off the wall for the background, and yes, this one's been on my wall. I really like this one. I simply call it Silver Spread. Why do I call it Silver Spread? Well, I've been obsessed with doing this for a while. I've liked this type of painting, and granted, what does it mean to me? It's just, I don't know. I enjoy making these, what I call spread paintings. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with seeing people sometimes take a huge canvas or some other canvas and they put holes in a bucket and they just swing the bucket around and let the paint fall where it may. What I do with these is I will take a line of paint and just put it on there, and then just what I say, I'll spread the paint. Just spread it up and down, side to side, wherever I need to go. I will just spread it. And then I'll take another very specific brush that I love to use. I did it with copper on a couple of paintings, and oh, excuse me. If you notice or remember the color series, I used a metallic color that matched or went with the color of each of the paintings, and I used that very same brush technique to create a little bit of a background, but it's in front. I like it. With this one, if you notice those yellows and oranges and greens and reds, they're mixed in with some blues, and then there's another color, thin color. You can see it better on the camera now. That is the silver, where I took some silver paint and just sort of spread it all over the spots. I love this because with the light, it seems like you can see it a little bit better. And I like it putting it in a sort of a darker spot, and I hit it with a flashlight, and it just jumps out at you a lot more. I love this kind of thing, and that's what I did with this one. But now, to let you know where you can find me, all of you are watching, or I should say watching slash listening to this, you're listening to it on YouTube at Fill the Lip. Subscribe, subscribe. When this whole thing gets locked up with what I want to call the Lip Media Productions, that just sounds good every time I say it, you'll be able to enjoy this and other content. Some giveaways if I pull that whole thing off, which would be nice, won't it? Yeah. But I also want to let you know that you can check me out on Instagram at Phil. No. Instagram is not at anything. Instagram is Philip Henderson 501. You can catch me on X. I'm also out there on, of all things, as I am at the ultimate Johnny come lately when it comes to TikTok. I'm not there. And then My very favorite thing is my Facebook group, our Facebook group, The Lip. Join us. There's always room for one more person to join the Facebook group. Now, to tie a nice little bow on this whole show, I'm going to give you some words of wisdom, and they're going to be more randomized than any other words of wisdom that I've given out for a while. And here they are. Broken glass is not fun to walk on with bare feet. Walking on grass with sneakers is way better. One more time. Broken glass is not fun to walk on with bare feet. Walking on grass wearing sneakers is way better. There's a message in there somewhere. There really is. But as for me, it is in fact now 12:10 a.m. February 1st. Happy February. I'm going to go get a little bit of sleep and sometime around 5 or 6 o'clock, download this episode. Until then, my name is Phil, and you've just listened to The Lip.